Hi team, in this set of slides we're going to look at price elasticity of supply. We're going to outline the meaning and significance, and then we're going to look at the three factors that impact it. So again, setting the scene, this is your definition: the responsiveness of total quantity supplied of a product to a change in the price of a product. So very similar to PED, except this time we're looking at how a change in price will impact the total quantity supplied. All right, so how a producer is going to respond to changes in prices in their products. The equation is very similar to PED as well, except this time it's the percentage change on quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in price. And similarly, again, that is going to give us a number that is either greater or less than 1. If it is less than 1, then PES is low and we're dealing with an inelastic product. If PES is higher than 1, we're dealing with PED that is high and we're dealing with a relatively elastic product. Okay. So why do producers care? Like, have a think about this for a moment. You're a producer and you produce a product. Why do you think it matters whether or not you understand if PES is high or low? Have a think about it in the sense that, imagine you sell apples and the price of apples doubles overnight for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But let's say it doubles overnight. What's your capacity going to be to increase the amount of apples that you sell quickly? Like, think about it for a second. You're a producer, your product is now worth more. You're obviously going to want to try and sell more because it's going to lead to higher profits. But if you produce apples, can you do that? Can you suddenly just grow more apples? Well, no, you can't, because you're at the mercy of, obviously, the capacity at which you're currently at. It takes a long time to produce apples. They don't just appear overnight. You know, your orchards are already set up. So how do you then react quickly? Versus a product that maybe you can store in a shed, or it's durable, or it lasts for a long time. You might have a stockpile of it. If the price of that product were to increase, well, what would you do? You would flood the market. Okay, so it's important for producers to understand how they are able to respond to changes in price so that they are then able to plan for either an increase or a decrease in the price of their product. Okay, so it can affect the economic viability of a business as well as their ability to respond to changes in price signals, and products with low PES are going to struggle to respond to changes in those price signals. Okay, so they're really the, I suppose, economic losers in this sense, because they're not going to be able to maximize profits in the face of an increase in prices. So similar again, we saw this before with demand. We're now dealing with a supply curve that's really steep, okay? It's not that nice 45-degree angle, it's really steep. And again, that's coupled with a few things. So if you've got a steep supply curve, you're dealing with low PES, you're dealing with PES that is less than 1, you're dealing with inelastic PES. So they're all grouped together. Here is an example. So let's assume there's an increase in the price of 20%. Draw those nice dotted lines across and then straight down. You'll notice that the relative increase in quantity supplied is smaller than the initial change in price. So whoever's producing whatever this product is, unfortunately for them, they're unable to respond quickly to the change in price, which means they still enjoy an increase in profits, but nowhere near as much as they could should they be in a situation where they can flood the market with their product. So the responsiveness in QS is relatively smaller than the change in price. Therefore, the supply curve in this situation is inelastic, or PES is considered to be low. And if you plug the numbers through the equation, you'll get a number that is less than 1, which supports our understanding that we are dealing with an inelastic product. Okay, flip side of that is a supply curve that becomes relatively flatter. Again, similar to PED, you can see that it's nice and flat, meaning that it is a high PES, or it is elastic PES, or it is greater than 1. So let's use this graph to make sense of that. If we look at price, in this scenario, there's an increase in price equal to 10%. And if you draw your nice dotted lines across and then down, you'll see that there's a relatively larger increase in the quantity that is supplied. So whoever this is and whatever product they're producing, they've seen, oh, okay, there's an increase in the price of my product. Let's go, let's sell as much as we possibly can. And they're in a situation where they can do that for a whole variety of reasons, okay? So the responsiveness in quantity supplied is relatively larger than the change in price, and therefore the supply curve is elastic, and if we plug the numbers through, we get a number that is greater than 1, okay? So that's the technical aspects of what's going on here. The question is, well, why? Why are some producers able to respond better than others? And there's 3 factors that you need to know, and this is the first. Spare capacity. So if you've got spare capacity available, then you're able to then use that spare capacity if you see an increase in the price of your product. So you might be a factory, you've got some idle machinery, suddenly the price of your product goes up. What are you going to do? You're going to fire up those machines. You're going to start to increase output because you then want to sell those goods as soon as you can because they're now worth more. So more spare capacity means a greater capacity to respond, meaning you've got a higher PES. You're more willing and able to increase your output to sell more goods as soon as possible. Unfortunately, however, if you're at capacity and then the price of your product still goes up, well, I mean, it's still a good thing. You're still going to earn more profits, but nowhere near as much as you could have had you have had more spare capacity that you could have used, okay? Okay, number 2 is the production period. So this is how long it actually takes to produce your product. So if it's really quick for you to produce your product, then you can increase your output levels quickly in the face of an increase in price. A good example could be digital products, for example. Not many digital products take long to make. You might have a software product that you can just copy and paste and sell as many as you want in the face of an increase in price, and that's a fabulous thing for you. So that increase in price is met with a relatively larger increase in the quantity that is supplied. And the opposite is true. Let's go back to the apple example at the start. If it takes you a long time to grow an apple, but suddenly apples become more expensive and you could earn more profit, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to flood the market with your apples because it takes so long to grow them. And that's the case for any, fresh produce, really. So shorter production periods mean greater capacity to respond, which means you're going to have a higher PES. And then number 3, the durability of the good. All right, so you can see on the left we've got a carton of milk and on the right we've got a TV, okay? Milk spoils. It sits in the fridge up until a certain date and then it goes off and then it needs to be disposed of. Whereas for a television, it can sit in a warehouse or a storage room for months, years even. I know it would eventually get superseded, but it has a relatively much longer durability time compared to milk. So if the good can be stored, then producers can store excess stock to be entered into the market once the price goes up. So you might be sitting on a whole bunch of TVs that you've got sitting in a warehouse, and then for whatever reason the price goes up, as any rational producer would, you are then going to flood the market with your TVs because you want to capitalize on the fact that the price of your product has gone up. Unfortunately, milk producers can't do that, right? They've got pretty much not a fixed level of milk, but their variability is quite small. If milk was to increase in price overnight, it's not as if there's a whole bunch of milk that's sitting on a shelf waiting to be sold, into the medium term. So yeah, they can respond a little bit, but they're not going to be in a position to flood the market with milk because obviously milk is not durable. There's not going to be some milk hidden away that they're then going to be able to flood the market with. Okay, so let's have a look at this question. The price elasticity of supply for avocados is likely to increase if. So we're dealing with a perishable good. We're dealing with a good that cannot be stored. It has a relatively long production time. So we're trying to understand how can we increase the PES. So we're looking for something that's going to help us to either make the item more durable or potentially allow us to store the item, or for us to speed up the production process. So preservatives are invented to extend the shelf life of avocados. Bang, that one sounds great. If we can do that, then we're able to have more avocados sitting on the shelf. We're able to then put them away, not for obviously months and months and months, but maybe instead of an avocado spoiling in 7 days, it might spoil in 14 days. That gives us a little bit more capacity to play with. There's an increase in the demand for avocados? No. There's a decrease in the price of avocados? No. And the cost of fertilizer increases? No. Okay, so B, C, and D aren't sounding even in the ballpark. They haven't really tried to confuse us here. The answer is obviously A. And then another question, explain one factor that would affect the price elasticity of the supply of fish. For 3 marks, you needed to be able to demonstrate your understanding of what price elasticity is, including a good definition. All right, do not skimp on that definition. Make sure it is complete. The identification of a factor, and then the explanation of that factor. So fish, for example, can be frozen. So if we go back to our understanding of factors, for example, the durability of a good, there's an argument to say that a fish could be durable in the sense that they can be frozen. And then if they're frozen, producers are going to have a stockpile of fish that they can then call on should there be a change in price. You can go the other way as well. There's a lot of arguments there to say that the price elasticity of fish is going to be relatively low because it's a perishable good. So it doesn't matter how you go. You could go elastic or inelastic. As long as you select the correct factor and then explain it, you're going to be fine. A little bit of an example here, should you want to have a read of it. And I think that's it. Thanks, guys.